Hi, my name is Spencer Couch, and this is Financial Pop, episode 18, Stupidity. There's an old Mark Twain quote that says, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." Today we're going to take a look, and this video may be a little bit longer than some of them in the past, but I'll try to keep it pretty brief. But we're going to take a look at a few things that are dangerous things that we believe, some stupid things that many people do believe. And we're going to focus on someone who is many people's hero, and that is Dave Ramsey. Now, Dave Ramsey has done some amazing things for many, many people. He's helped people get out of debt. He's helped people start to save, and they owe a lot to him. However, some of his investment advice can be very dangerous, and we're going to explore some of that here today. On DaveRamsey.com, there's a blog post called "The 12% Reality." Now, the idea of earning 12% in the market each and every year is a fallacy. It doesn't happen, especially when you're investing in mutual funds. But let's take a look at this blog post. Now, I'm going to be sharing my screen here, so you're not going to be seeing me. You're just going to be hearing my voice, and I'm going to be talking. But let's take a look here.
I have very little patience for stupidity.
Okay, here we are, the 12% reality. This is the blog post from DaveRamsey.com. Just a couple things to note here. They talk about 12% being, where does the 12% come from? How can we expect to get it? And then they go into a lot of detail about the current average annual return from the 1926 through 2011 from the S&P 500 is 11.69%. Pretty close to 12, but not quite there. I mean, if we're doing some big rounding, then we can get there. But then they talk about no one really cares about the 80-year history. Let's look at more recent history. So we go back to 92 to 2011. That means the S&P's average is 9.07. Then we jump to 5 years before that, 87 to 2011, and we've got a 10.05%. And then in 2009, the market's annual return was 26.46%. And in 2010, it was 8%, and in 2011, it was negative 1.12%. What do all these numbers have to do with anything? All I see here is they keep telling us you can get a 12% rate of return, and they're not showing us anywhere that that's happening. Now, there have been periods of time when a 12% rate of return has happened in the S&P 500. But they talk about how 12% is not a magic number. Well, I don't see 12% here. The closest we got was 11.69, and that took 80 years into account. So that's an issue there. But let's keep going in this blog post. So it talks about what about the lost decade here, the first 10-year period where the stock market had lost money rather than had a positive rate of return. And again, these are all S&P numbers, S&P 500. So it talks about 90 to 99, the S&P was 19% annually, whereas in 2000 to 2009, we lost a little bit. A period of negative returns. But if we take 90 to 99 and add that, so it's 90 to 2009, then we have a positive rate of return. We earned money in the S&P 500. That's all well and good, but sequence of returns is what really matters here. But then he goes on to say, but that's the past, right? So what do we do when we can't predict the future? In investing, we can only base our expectation on how the market has behaved in the past. That's a very important point. When you're investing, you can only look back. You can't look into the future. So what does that mean? Well, let's take a look at some past numbers here. So this is the S&P history from 1997 through the end of 2015. From 1997 up until March of 2000, the stock market went up by 106%. Then it went down until October of 2002 by 49%. But then it grew back up again by 101% up till October of 2007. And then a pretty steep decline by 57% through March of 2009. And since then, we've been on a pretty steady upward climb here, up 202%. So if we look at the history, we've got 100% followed by a negative 50%, then 100% followed by a negative 60%, then 200%. So there's a lot of up and down in the stock market. So what does that mean? I want you to notice something here. When we go up 100% and then we drop by 50%, where are we? We're basically the same place we were after we went up by 100%. Now, to get back to the place we were before, we have to increase by another 100%. Even though we only dropped by 50%, we have to get a 100% rate of return to just get back to where we were. Now, dropping by 57%, notice we had gone up quite a bit before we were back where we were. It takes a long time to recover. A sequence of returns makes a big, big difference. Now let's take a look at a cash flow calculator. This is using the Truth Concepts software, but let's condense this whole concept into a short period of time. Let's say a 4-year period of time. Now, if I were to tell you that I was going to invest some money for you and I was going to guarantee you an average 25% rate of return, that sounds pretty good. Let's say you were putting $100,000 in. That sounds pretty good, right? That means at the end of this 4-year period, you're going to have $244,000, right? That's what a 25% rate of return each year would give you. Well, let me show you how that may not be the case. How you can really get a bad shake in this deal. So let's say in the first year I do very, very well, and I get you that 100% rate of return. The second year, though, things go bad. Like the stock market does, things went down by 50%. Then we have another year where things go back up again. We go 100% up. And then things go back down again, another 50% loss. Oops. What that does is it gets you back to where you were 4 years ago when you started. However, I gave you an average rate of return of 25%, even though your actual rate of return was 0. Now, if we take into account inflation, you're actually further behind. But this is going to be something we're going to talk about here in just a minute. There is also management fees that would come in there. So even though you got a 25% rate of return, an average rate of return, which is what Dave Ramsey is quoting, you can be significantly lose money in a deal like this. So, and that's something we're going to explore here in just a minute. So if we're using the past to predict the future, all we can do is expect ups and downs in the stock market. Now, over time, it does tend to increase, but at what rate? A 12% rate of return doesn't mean anything if you lost 50% the year before. So let's take a look at the next bit in the blog post here. What he ends up talking about is, if you're still unsure, you can use different numbers. You can use 10 or 8% to predict how things are going to go. Again, in this day and age, those are probably high numbers, but let's use them, is what he's basically saying. But here's the next part that he doesn't even address at all. How do you find your funds? So he's telling you to invest in mutual funds, and you'll get that 12%. So how do you get the 12% long-term growth? By using an investing professional to help you find them. Now, of course, he's recommending using investing professionals who do this out of charity, right? Who you don't have to pay anything to, right? Because that 12% that mystical 12% that he's saying that you're going to get, that's a gross number. So we want that to be accurate. Well, let's take a look at some numbers.
Stupid. Yo, you don't even know what stupid is. It's about to get all stupid up in here.
Okay, so here's another cash flow calculator. We're going to look at a 30-year period. And we're going to look, we're going to say maybe you have nothing to start with. You're going to start saving, and you're going to start saving $10,000 per year over this 30-year period. Now, if you didn't get any rate of return, that would mean you'd have $300,000. But we've got the market history all the way, so the past 30 years, all the way up through the end of 2016, the market history with the S&P 500, including dividends, which depending on the mutual fund you're invested in, you may or may not receive dividends. But that being said, let's take the dividends. Over that period of time, you've got 11.52%. So let's plug that in here. We get an 11.52% rate of return. That gets you to $2.4 million. Not a bad deal. You put $300,000 in, it grew by $2.1 million. That's a healthy budget, or a healthy amount that you've accumulated. Now, Dave Ramsey would lead you to believe that this is what's going to happen. You invest in the stock market, and this is what's going to happen. You're gonna be a millionaire. You're gonna have plenty of money to retire on. Now we can discuss whether that's plenty of money to retire on using the stock market or not. But regardless, that's a great rate of return. Now the problem with that is the 11.52% rate of return is an average rate of return. It's not an actual rate of return. So if we were to take those same numbers and we were to copy them and put them in as our rate of return here, instead of an average, or instead of 11.52% every time, we're getting an average 11.52%. Notice our $2.4 million, we just lost $900,000 because of the sequence of returns. That's a huge difference. That's about a third, a little more than a third of our money that we had accumulated. Where did it all go? Well, that's the stock market going up and down. Now, you're still at 1.5 million. You've put 300,000 in. Still not bad. You've done well, but that doesn't take into account any of the additional expenses of investing in the stock market. Now, you may be wondering what kind of expenses I'm talking about. Well, I did some research on The Motley Fool, Investopia, Bankrate.com, a few other places to try and come up with some averages. What I found was the average management fee for a portfolio invested in the stock market is 1%. The average expense ratio, 1.5%, and the average administrating costs are 3%. Now, if we add those together, that's 5.5%. Now, you may get a better deal here, you may get a better deal there, depending on your who's managing your money and so on. Let's just say that this is a 3% fee, 3% on average. What happens there is that $1.5 million that you had is now down to $813,000. You started off at $2.4 million. You've lost basically $1.6 million through the sequence of returns in the stock market and the management fees of this account, and conservative management fees at that. Now that $300,000 that you put in here doesn't look so good. You haven't even tripled that money, even though Dave Ramsey's telling you you're going to get 12% in the market every year. So in this situation, instead of an 11.52% rate of return, which is what your average gross rate of return was, your actual rate of return ends up being 5.84%. You took on a ton of risk. You paid a lot in fees for a 5.84% rate of return. This is where Dave Ramsey's argument falls apart. Now, if you're not getting 11.52% gross, if you're getting an 8% gross, think about how much lower your actual rate of return is. You don't end up retiring wealthy. You end up retiring if you're lucky. So this is the big fallacy out there. People believe that the stock market only goes up and you are going to retire rich. It's just not a reality these days, and this is exactly why. Now, I don't show you all of this to discourage you. I show you this to know that you need to do your research. You need to find out what the truth is. Don't believe some talking head like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman or whoever it is. Do your research. No one has your financial best interest at heart more than you do. Remember that, and that's my challenge to you. Find ways for you to save money. Make sure you do the research that you need to be informed. And if you do that, you will be better off financially. Thanks.